Yeah, you see it. You see it. You see the stack. You see the Sasuke. The Sasuke tank top. You see the layout. We're back for the last segment, or the only other segment of the Ranger's Apprentice novels. Now, before we start, I have to let you know that I was incorrect. So, I was wrong when I said there were only 11 books in this series. This is what I'm going to start off with. Because I felt so betrayed last week when I finished everything, last week or the week before, that there are actually 12. The last book in this series is called The Royal Ranger. And you know what sucks about that? It was not on the, Ranger's Apprentice series ebooks that I got from Amazon. So Bezos lied to me. What do you think about that? That's the title of the video. Bezos lied to me. Oh man. Okay, so I'm not gonna read book 12, by the way. I've just spent all year trying to finish these 11 books. I will read book 12 at some point, but not like this year. Probably not this year. I really don't feel like reading it. I will read it again when I reread these books, but not right now. Okay? Okay. So, where are we going next? We are starting off with book 7, Eric's Ransom. So, in book 6, when I talked about how it felt like 5 and 6, between book 4 and book 5 and 6, it felt like they just jumped forward years, right? Because book 4 was right at the end of Scandia stuff, I think. Am I right? I think book 4 was right at the end of Scandia stuff, right? Yeah, book 4 was right at the end of Battle for Scandia, and then it goes into Sorcerer of the North. So it jumps forward into him being a ranger, and then him getting sent on a mission. And so you're wondering, wait, what happened? Where was his inauguration? Where was all his fun stuff that was supposed to happen at the end of the ranger apprenticeship? So John Flanagan says the exact same thing in the foreword, that I had almost completed writing Ranger's Apprentice, Book 6, The Siege of Macendaw, when I realized that I had neglected an important period in Will and Halt's life. Books 1 through 4 deal with Will's early years as an apprentice. Books 5 and 6 describe his first mission as a graduate ranger, but there was a gap in between them. I realized that as Will approached the moment where he would become a ranger in his own right, he would be troubled by the worry that he wasn't ready for the responsibility that this would entail. In addition, I wondered about Halt. As graduate ranger, Will would move on to his own fief. How would Halt deal with the loss of his cheerful, lively influence, one that had become so much a part of his day-to-day? So he corrected the timeline a little bit and inserted Eric's Ransom. Now, Eric's Ransom takes place between books 4, Battle for Scandia, and books 5 and 6, Macendaw. So what is book 7? Eric's Ransom basically is the tail end of Will's apprenticeship, where they go off to Aridi, which is his concept of the Middle Eastern nation, because a lot of his world building is based on actual Earth terrain and culture. This is Middle East, where you have deserts and Middle Eastern people and their use of horses and all these different things. So the idea behind this is that Eric goes there for something and then gets captured because one of his fellow Scandians is trying to betray him and become the Oberjar. And so Eric gets captured, he gets held for ransom, and his crewmates go to Araluen and ask the king, since they have an agreement with the king, can you please either bargain with the Aridi or do something to get Eric back for us, because we can't get him back because he's held for ransom. So that's the premise of it. So you see Will, you see Halt, you see Evelyn, who's the king's daughter, and I think it's mainly these three. Am I right? I'm trying to remember, but I think it's mainly these three. I don't remember exactly if Horace is in there. I think he might be in there. Actually, yes. So it's Halt, Will, Evelyn, Jilin. If you remember Jilin from earlier books, Jilin was Halt's previous apprentice, who's now obviously a full-fledged ranger, and he's also a sword master, which is sick. And I think and Horace, yes. Okay, so it's those guys. So the party, as we affectionately call them in an RPG, sets off to Adidi to start bargaining and meeting with people to get Eric back. So as soon as they get there, they meet the Vakir, which is like the leader of one of their tribes on the coast, Seletin, but his name is actually Seletin. Um, Meets them. They're big on bargaining. So Evelyn, there's this whole scene about like Evelyn bargaining with him and everything, and outsmarting him in certain aspects. Afterwards, they realize that, oh shoot, one of our caravans that was transporting Eric from this coastal tribe to the actual jail got hijacked by a different like combating tribe to the Adidi. And so now they're on the quest to find Eric, get him back, take revenge on this tribe, all these things. That's their quest. And new member joins the party, Seletin. So Seletin joins the party a little bit. If you were to think of it as an RPG, he'd be like your temporary member at underneath like the classes, whatever it is. So that's basically book 7. It's their travels through Edidi, and it's actually not bad. It was actually really fun, really fun thing. One thing I need to say is, where's my map? Where is my world map? I don't know where I'm going. I'm just assuming this way, this way, this way, or this way. You see those tuts? You see it. I don't know where these things are, and so I really wish he would put a map in there, but he didn't. Anyways, we're gonna move on. Kings of Clonmel. First things first, still no map. Second, this is a little bit more so of a Halt central story slash plotline. So Halt is from the southern, I believe, country of Hibernia, where in Hibernia you have different kingdom states that don't like each other, and it turns out that there's a pseudo cult rising in Hibernia, which is actually its second time attempting to rise, because in the past it had tried to rise, Halt put an end to it, and then it's back. So Kings of Clonmel is basically Halt taking Will and Horace, the main party, as we all know, through Hibernia to find these cult members, put a stop on the cult rising, and in that you understand a bit of Halt's actual familial background, which it's revealed in this book that he is actually a prince. He's technically supposed to be king. So his parents were the kings of Clonmel is like the area, it's not the actual place where they are. What's his actual like country called? Got it. When I'll go back and check it, and I'll insert it somewhere here where you'll see like the name of the actual country. But so Halt's parents were kings, right? Or kings, or were royalty. They were the king and queen. And technically, Halt and his twin brother were the princes. Halt was technically older, so he was first in line to be the next king. Now, he and his brother have very bad blood, which is really unfortunate. I don't want to spoil that part, because there's a lot of stuff in here about their relationship, which will make you hate his brother with a passion, but make you enjoy Halt that much more. So Kings of Clonmel is basically us going to Halt's background. John Flanagan's building the world a little bit more, and they're putting a stop to the cult that's trying to rise inside of Hibernia. Next, Halts Peril. So this is another, two-part book. So we start in Hibernia with Halt and his brother and the cult, and then we follow into Halts Peril, where Halt, Will, and Horace are still trying to follow the cult and kind of run them out of the country, but make sure they actually stamp them out. They don't want them to run away, and then a couple of years later they're trying to go back into Rising again. So they're following the cult members, and at this time, the cult members are kind of a bit, what's the word for it? They're a bit alert as to, is somebody following us? Who's following us? If those Rangers are back, we need to get rid of them as soon as possible. The cult leader has hired 3 mercenaries called Genovesans that excel / have mastery in what's it called when you assassination, mastery in assassination, and they have their own methods to do it. So in Kings of Clonmel, we had seen, there's like a scene at the end, there's like a couple of cool gladiator scenes. I think Jonathan did a great part of that. In Halts Peril, we see again, well, now it's Rangers against Genovesans again, because the Genovesans are basically the cult leader's scouts. He's like, go scout ahead, go scout behind, make sure they're gone. So Halts Peril kind of starts off in Will, Horace, and Halt following them, and then realizing, okay, well, the leader's probably going to send back the Genovesans. We're going to have to prepare for that. How are we going to prepare for that? Well, we're going to have to outsmart them, try and combat them, try and take them down. So there's a scene towards like the end of the beginning where they're fighting them, and Halt gets grazed by one of their crossbows. So Genovesans use crossbows, Rangers use longbows. Genovesans use crossbows because it's easier to use with less strength, and for assassinations, it's easier to carry around, conceal, all those things. The Genovesans layer the tips of their arrows with a little bit of a type of poison that can come from 2 separate flowers. That's all I remember. I don't know the details. I'm not someone who specializes in flowers. I don't know what that is. Is it a phlebotomist? Is that a word? I'll also enter that here somewhere. Like what is the science of studying flowers, and what are these scientists themselves called? Not next. We're going to keep going. So Halt gets struck by one of these arrows, so now he has a poison inside of him. The issue with the poison, it's a roller coaster poison. It gives you false sense of hopes. It gives you hallucinations and exhaustion and pain, and then it feels like it's going away. You're like, oh, I'm getting better, and then boom, it drops again, and then you're almost dead. So, once again, the Halt is in peril. And Will and Horace had to figure out, how do we fix this? We don't know how to fix this. Luckily, wherever they end up camping is a couple of days out of Masondon, where we had Malcolm, the healer. So the idea there is that Will has to ride to Malcolm, bring him back, and figure out how to heal Halt with Malcolm's help. That's kind of like the first half of the book. The second half of the book is this part where they're trying to figure out how to heal him. And Malcolm can't figure it out because he's like, there are 2 types of flowers. I have both of them, but if I give him the wrong dose, he will die, regardless. So they have to figure out, how do we accurately say which one is the right one. So they have to now, I'm explaining all this because I thought this was a really cool part in the book. They have to figure out how to get that information, and they think, okay, well, why don't we go to the source? We need to capture the Genovesans that did this and have them spill it. That's easier said than done. So I promise, okay, I got baited. I need to start with saying I got absolutely baited. So at the beginning of one of the chapters, when they're starting their plan, right, it's like a little, Will and Malcolm are looking over the horizon, looking over the tomb, not the tomb, the little pit that they made and dug over, and I was like, oh my god, wait, did he actually die? Were they not able to do that? I got absolutely baited because I was like, wait, did Halt actually die? And then it's like, no, they just put that there to make the Genevesan think they get the Genevesan baited and think Halt died. So he feels like a sense of security. Halt was on their horse, like behind them, and I was like, oh my god. Oh, I got baited. I got absolutely baited. Never again. I'm too smart for that. Kind of. After that, they have to capture the Genevesan. So you have like a little Will and Genevesan face off, and Will's trying to capture this guy. Man uses like his brass knuckles and everything. He slings it. It's cool. It's pretty cool fight scene. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of sick. Capture the Genevesan. This is the best part of the entire book. So they're trying to get the Genevesan to spill the type of poison, the type of flower that it came from, and he's just lips are sealed. He's not talking. He's not doing anything. He even tries to almost escape, and almost like kill Will in the process. All these things, right? So my guy Horace, goody two shoes, always the nice guy Horace says, well, if he won't tell us how to save Halt's life, maybe he'll tell us how to save his own life. So he takes one of the crossbows of the Genevesan and stabs him with it, saying, okay, now the poison's in you. Now you tell us which flower it's from. Because if you don't, you're also going to die. Oh my gosh. I was like, Horace, top tier guy. I think he is my second favorite character of the series, in my opinion. Just after that scene alone, because that was raw. That was absolutely raw. And so Genevesan spills, they get the potion, they get the remedy, all that stuff, and then, you know, I think the Genevesan like eventually dies. I think one of them eventually kills him, or he runs away or something like that. I don't want to say too much after that. But that was Halts Peril. It's basically it was like these two books were Halt centric, but really good ending on Halts Peril with Horace having a little bit of a character change where he's always goody two shoes and he's like, no. You're gonna tell me or you're gonna die. It was so cool. It was so cool. The next one is actually not this one. The Emperor of Nihonja. For those of you who are well versed in language, can probably know what this word means. Nihon, which means Japan. That's what the Japanese call. It's either Nippon or Nihon. That the Japanese call Japan. Similar to how in India we don't call, like a lot of Indians don't call it India. India they call it India Bharat. It's kind of the same thing. So world building again. We're going back into more areas, which is great. This is super great. Now, I complained and I complained and I complained. And you know what he gave us? He gave us a map. He finally gave us a map. This is the map. Oh, it's bright. Sorry. This is the map. This is nothing like I thought the map was going to be. I promise you, I had no clue. I thought the world was like on this side, not that side. And this is why we need maps. This is why we need cartography in our lives, so we know where we're going. So, Emperor of Nihonja is now Horace's like coming of age like book. This is the Horace novel. This is how you end the book on a high note. This is a Horace book. So, the Emperor of Nihonja basically starts off with Horace and their old buddy. I remembered his name. I literally wrote his name down. Just kidding. I wrote in my notes to see George. It's George. Am I right? I'm right, right? I have to be right. It's George. I knew it. See, I didn't need to. I'm so good. So, this book takes place with Horace and George in Nihonja, talking to the Emperor. So what they're basically doing is Horace and George were there as a part of diplomatic relations. Horace, you know, a knight of the king, will probably be a sword master at some point and be a battle master at some point. He went to Nihonja to learn of Nihonja's combat practices and kind of like learn more from them, because the Adaluen method is different. And we get there, and as always, in any nice country with a super nice, sweet emperor, there's a revolt. There's always a revolt. Why is there always a revolt? Why just stop revolting? And you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So the idea is that in Nihonja there are there are basically two classes. There is the Shenshi class, or the Senshi. Is it Senshi or Shenshi? I think it's Senshi class. And then it's the non-Senshi class. So the idea is that the Senshi believe themselves to be superior to other classes, and they look down on them, because the Senshi class is basically the the combat class of Nihonja. That's where most of their great commanders and great fighters come from. And since combat is a lot to them, Senshi are seen as higher on the class scale than like commoners, villagers, peasants, farm people, all those. So the emperor himself, Shigeru, is trying to abolish that wall between the classes, but the issue is that the Senshi leader doesn't like that, because he doesn't want to give up his power and his class standing and all that stuff. So we start off with an attempt on Shigeru's life by, scouts of this Senshi leader, and Horace at this point, Horace and George are with them. Horace defends the emperor. He slays a couple of Senshi guys, this whole fight scene and everything. And, okay, the emperor's going to have to go into hiding. Okay, well, George and Horace are here on diplomatic things. They have to leave. Horace says he doesn't want to leave. So there's this thing of Horace traveling with the emperor to keep him safe from the Senshi leader, and then George leaving Nihonja to go back to Adaluen. That's the beginning of the book. But how do you have an RPG without a party? Right? So Horace needs his other party members. Where are they going to come from? So George rings up he rings up the king, Evelyn, right? And he says Horace has gone missing. He's with the emperor. The emperor, I think the emperor had an attempt on his life, all this stuff. So by this time, Horace and Evelyn are kind of sweet. They're kind of looking sweet to each other. So Evelyn convinces her father to go on a search party for Horace, under the guise of, searching for a knight, as opposed to, I want to go find my love. And she meets up with Will, Halt, and Alice when they're on a different mission, and the four of them, along with Celestine, actually, go to Nihonja. So literally the full party is here. You have Halt, Will, Horace, Evelyn, Alice, and Celestine. Literally the 6-man RPG party. This is Xenoblade Chronicles 3.5. And they travel to Nihonja and try and find Horace initially, and then protect the emperor. Now, the cool part is, and if you have any sort of sense, you can sense this. The mission that Halt and Will were on was in a different country, right? So Horace is in Nihonja. Will and Halt were in, I believe. Also, where's Nihonja even on this map? I just realized that. It's not even on the map. But I believe they're in Toscana. Wait. Yeah, I believe they were in Toscana right here. Learning of the Toscanan battle practices of grouping up and attacking individual fighters, because Toscana's citizens aren't great fighters individually, but as a group they can really hold their own. So it's that kind of battle formation. So you're like, oh, so they're learning battle formations in here. I wonder where that's going to end up. maybe a Nihonja. And that's basically the book. That is, it's a story of kind of Horace's coming of age, and you actually see a great relationship between Horace and Shigeru come about. Horace sees Shigeru as his father figure because Horace was raised an orphan. He didn't have a father, and so he looks up to Shigeru as a father, and Shigeru looks to Horace as like almost an adopted son. Great idea, or great just image and story in that in itself. It is also an Evelyn and Alice booster because these girls are wild. They go off on their own. They fight a snow tiger by themselves. It's crazy. So it's a little Evelyn and Alice relationship booster as well. And it's a nice little wrap up. At the end of it, you see some nice, fun things happen in between the characters. I'll let you read that on your own. Unless you're dying to know, leave it in the comments and I'll tell you. I'll spoil everything. I will spoil everything. That was the end of, to me, that was kind of the end of the story there. So enter book 11, The Lost Stories. Initially, I'll be 100% honest, I was not so inclined because I didn't know how it was going to come about. Because when you start the book, it's like, oh, you're starting, the setting where you start this book is hundreds, if not thousands of years after like these stories. So you see like archaeologists excavating the ruins and finding these different things and trying to like figure out, you know, who lived here, what did they do, like can we salvage anything, all that stuff. And I was like, it kind of made me a little bit bittersweet and sad that, oh, this is not like another story. It's like a thousands of years later looking back kind of thing. And it kind of got me a little bit Plus, the first chapter is called Death of a Hero, and I was like, don't tell me somebody dies. Why? So I didn't read it initially. And then I was on the flight back from Ohio this was all in beginning of July. And I thought, you know what? No. I'm going to read it regardless. Also, he included another map. We finally get a map of Castle Redmont in book 11. Book 11 is when we get a map of Castle Redmont. Like, come on. Where was all of this stuff at the beginning? Regardless, I think, after saying all that I said I didn't want to read it, I forced myself to start it, whatever it is, this is one of the best ways to end a series that I've personally read. The reason I say that is because you see this word stories. There are multiple little short stories about all the characters in this book, and that's how he kind of ties up the ending of like the different little character relationships and the plot story and the plot points and all that stuff. Tons of little short stories. I know why John Flanagan was writing short stories for his son to start reading. This stuff is gold. This is, in my opinion, the best way to end a series. I was happy with this being the ending before I realized Royal Ranger was book 12. I was so happy with how this was, because you see, you know, a little bit of Will's father and that story. You see Horace and Evelyn's story. You see the end of Will and Alice's story. You see Halt and Crowley's, like how they met and how they became friends. You see a little bit of Jill and Jenny action. There's this. You also see a Will and Tug story, which is so sad. But it had to happen. You know, it had to happen. And so all these little short stories are such an amazing tie out to the series, man. I really wish this was the last one. I don't know what the Royal Ranger is about. Like I said, I will read it eventually, just not right now, because I'm moving on to bigger and better things. Anyways, that was books 7 through 11 of The Ranger's Apprentice. And what I'm going to say is you should at least read books 7 through 11, or books 1 through 11 to get the full story. And then when I read Roll Ranger, I'll let you know how that is. But these were the books. Great series in my opinion. Like I said, I love this series. I will be rereading again in like 2 or 3 years probably, because I just always do. It's so easy to come back to these books and read them. I probably won't read all 11. Full disclosure. I might read like the Scandia ones. I'll probably skip Siege of Mason Da. I'll probably come back to the Lost Stories in Nihonja, and I'll probably read Royal Ranger at that point. That's probably what the plan will be. But regardless, great novel. Would I recommend it to you as maybe an beginner entry level reader, or if you want some sort of light read that still is engaging in terms of story plot, but it's not, you don't really have to work too hard, you're just along for the ride, read this book. I would 100% recommend it to you. A solid, in my opinion, an 8 out of 10 series, just in totality. And it doesn't matter. There's you have everything in this book besides a complex magic system, because there's no need for a magic system in this book, and that's dope because you have the ranger system, and that's magic in itself. So Ranger's Apprentice is it's like an 8 out of 10 story, and I just highly recommend it to everybody to read. It's just a fun ride. It's really just a fun ride. Anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. I will talk to you guys later. If you're on this channel right now and you're watching this, you probably already saw me making my YouTube banner, or at least the foundations of it. I'm still working on that. My goal is by the end of the year to have my banner done, have my basically get my channel all set up, and then you will see what's on the horizon for the next year. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.